Guys, it's Ela, and I am doing a journal review here. We've got the Handbook Journal Company by Travelogue series, and this is supposed to be specifically for watercolor. The paper is 90 pound, which I'm not in love with. I like 140, but you know, honestly, it's not too bad in terms of how heavy the paper is. It's cold press, but it's the cellulose, non-arches, non-expensive brand cold press, which means that it's definitely a little bit on the smooth side, smoother than I'm used to. The thing that got me on this particular journal is the packaging. They got the packaging down. How freaking cute is this flower? And then, you know, you can already see bad design choosing a light color for the cover, but you got to admit, this linen cover is very appealing, but it also likes to absorb watercolor, so already mine's beginning to look a little bit dirty. So what I wanted to do today is I'm going to show you the pictures that I've done in this book already. I'm also going to attempt to paint this flower in this book, because what I found with this paper is that while it's not bad paper, it's definitely watercolor paper, it's not good paper either. It's somewhere in the middle, and you have to treat it the way it likes to be treated, or you end up with some messes. So first thing I did was I did my little test with the salt. It kind of failed there. Color with some waters dropped on it. Worked, kind of, you know, but you can see it's not a super flowy paper. On my Montreal watercolor journal on the right, you can see how much better the colors mix and flow together compared to the Travelogue on the left. So I worked really hard on this picture, and if you haven't seen my video on granulating color, there's a link below. This is why people get frustrated with granulating color. With smoother papers, granulating colors tend to just kind of sit there and look muddy. Also tend to dry much more quickly than the rougher cold press papers like with Arches and Fabriano. The quick drying time and poor flow of Travelogue paper also means that you get kind of a streaky effect, and you can see how above you can see those streaks. You can see where I've painted with the brush, as opposed to below on the Arches cold press watercolor paper that really lets the paint flow, and the granulating paint is allowed to sink down into the little divots in the paper. Much more of a classic, beautiful granulating effect. It's not a terrible picture, but it would look so much nicer if I had chosen a non-granulating paint or a paper that just had more tooth to it. This is me painting outside, and I'm using papers that are more staining. They're not so granulating. You can see it's smoother, but it was a very hot day. The paint dried really fast, and I ended up with a lot of back runs throughout. And this is supposed to be a travel book. So if you can't paint fast enough on a hot day outside, that kind of defeats the purpose, I think, of this as being a book that you do plein air painting with. This is a landscape format. It's designed to paint landscapes. So come on. This is probably the best one that I've gotten so far. And because I'm doing small little quick areas wet and to wet, it can handle that. And these colors are mostly staining, so you're not getting that muddy quality. So here, this is probably my most successful out of my pictures so far. So I'm going to tell you a quick story on what inspired me to do this painting exercise. And it stems from when I was a little girl. And of course, I loved to draw. And my family bought me several sets of markers through my childhood. This company, they sold their markers in these beautiful metal boxes. And on the cover of the boxes, there would be an oil painting. Now, I'm a kid. I do not know that these are oil paintings. All I see is a really pretty picture on the tin, and inside the tin, there are markers. So my poor little 6-year-old brain looks at these pictures, and I swear I thought that they actually did these pictures with markers. And it wasn't till much later that I realized these are famous oil paintings. Part of me is still like suspicious and angry that they put famous oil paintings on a colored marker box. So yeah. I have a little bit more faith that it is possible to copy the painting on the packaging of this watercolor pad The question is, can the paper actually perform this well? So I'm going to find out. So here we go. Watch and see. So here I am filling in the poppy. I'm using a combination of Senellier's Bright Red, a little bit of Pyrrol Orange, just a tiny bit of Carmine, Permanent Carmine by Winsor Newton. But it's a pretty bright, warm, orangey red. And you can see that I've tested out all these colors ahead of time on the left. You know me, I love to test my colors and make sure that they're right. Next I'm going in with some gold green and a little bit of Winsor Yellow for the stems. It's a little bit more yellowish in this video than in real life. Now I'm going in with a little bit of Payne's Gray for the background. And this is pretty much all the colors that I use throughout the entire picture, just the colors that I've mentioned right here. I'm doing what is called glazing with this picture, which means that I'm letting I'm painting a layer, letting it dry completely, and I'm actually using a hairdryer between layers. I actually dried it with a hairdryer before I started this second layer that I'm doing now. And going in with a little bit of a deeper color. I mixed in a little bit of Payne's Gray and a little bit more Permanent Carmine for this deeper layer that I'm doing now. But yeah, just making sure each layer is dry and putting some more on. And the paper seems to be doing this really well. I don't know how it would work if you were doing a really large picture, but for a small one like this with lots of little small clumps of color, it seems to be doing great. Now I'm adding that same Payne's Gray into the background, defining the shape of those poppy pods. On all the stems. And you'll notice I'm only using one brush for this whole picture. You don't need to buy a million tools to do a good picture. If you have good tools, they should be able to do a variety of things. See my hand there? That's me holding down the paper while I dry it. This is sped up over 300%. This is my first painting that I've recorded and shared here on YouTube. So I welcome people's comments and suggestions on what they liked and what they didn't like in terms of my choice of editing of this picture. In future pictures, I show myself mixing the colors ahead of time, since I know that that's really helpful to see. Getting down all the little details, all the little lines, progressively more and more Payne's Gray. And you'll see I do test the paper a second time sometimes on the left, just to really make sure it looks the way I want it to. It's good to test with the same paper that you're using, whether it's a scrap sheet, from another painting, or the left page, like I did here. Just a little insurance. All the little details. I think I might be using a rigger. Yeah, that's a rigger. That is a different brush. I lied. This is a long, thin brush that can hold a lot of paint, but can also do a very, very thin line. And it's fun for doing outlines and little details. I like it much better than a short, small brush, because you can just keep painting and painting, because it has the length to hold a lot of paint. There it is, all done. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'm going to take a moment to thank Scott Looney, who has taught me how to edit as well as assisted with editing this video, and who also provided music. These videos would not be possible without his help. I also wish to thank Patreon member Cyndi Bruni. If you would like to receive cool bonuses and help fund future videos, check out my Patreon link in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. I'll see you next time.